Welcome to the Limit Free Life Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. I bring you tips, advice, and guest stories about creating work you love. Whatever type of career or business you have or want, I want to help you find more meaning, money, and happiness. Now we are live from Hollywood. Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Limit Free Life Show. And today is a unique day. It's July 15th. It's tax day in 2020. So not our usual tax day, but tax day this year. And I am always excited to get that done, excited to get the tax returns off and, have that all figured out. So to me, it's a little bit of a day to celebrate. And I'm bringing with me today on this very important day, Leslie Crumley from Structured Success. Leslie's been here once before because she is our resident money expert. And we are going to talk to Leslie about some tax ideas, ways to plan, ways to get ready already right now for next year so that it is a smooth year and the tax planning and thinking about taxes and getting taxes ready are not a giant headache. Because when we finish our taxes, I think a lot of us say, let's not make this so difficult next year. And so we're going to start right here, right now with today and make sure that we make this a smooth sailing for the year to come. Partly because it's going to be a shorter year. Because if we go back to April 15th for our tax day, it's already July 15th. We don't actually have that much time. So anyway, I'm going to allow Leslie to introduce herself. She is our financial expert, and she has a history of some ups and downs in her personal financial life, and made some big investments and lost some big investments. And from that, learned a lot of wonderful lessons. And now she teaches a lot of people how to be successful with their money and to fund a life worth living. That is her program, and it's excellent. And it gets into so many details that a lot of us don't get into. So Leslie is going to be a more regular guest on the show so that we can talk all things money, because today with COVID-19 and everything else, money is on everyone's mind. And for me, for the audience that listens to this show, entrepreneurs, career changers, it's always on your mind anyway, because you're trying to grow a business or you're trying to change careers, and money impacts the decisions that we make in those areas. So Leslie, welcome. Glad to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about, I know, one of my favorite things to talk about. I know it's weird, you guys don't judge, but I'm excited to share some of the things that I learned the hard way that might help you make next year smooth. So just a little bit about why I know this is because I bought a lot of property, and I was told, hey, you could lower your tax bracket if you buy property. Well, who knew? You can lower it so much, but you can lose a lot of money that you didn't invest. So that's why you have to be super careful. And that's one of the reasons I'm, pretty an expert at what I do now, because I had to go back and figure out, where did I go wrong? So I'm happy to share with you.
That's great. And can you give the audience just a brief description of your background, because you are a money person with a lot of money experience, and I'd love for you to just share your background.
Oh, sure. I got interested in money because I love to travel, and I know I need time and money to travel. So how do you do that, right? So I went to become a financial advisor because I thought, well, I'll learn about money there, which I did. And then I went into compliance because I wasn't thrilled with asset management and trying to get highest return on your dollar, which is asset management. So I went into compliance and supervised an office of in securities for administration, operations, and compliance, which is where I learned to be very good at tracking and seeing problems, and which is one of the things that I teach in my program is how do you avoid some compliance issues in your life. And then I decided I wanted to buy real estate. So I bought a lot of real estate and learned the hard way on how to integrate your tax planning with your income. And so that's a little bit about my background in financial services and personally investing in real estate.
Wonderful. And I love your enthusiasm for the topic of money. You make it actually a lot of fun because you see the value in knowing and understanding money and your money life and staying connected to your numbers and working through all of that. And I love the fact that you brought up your big why, because that's really what drives people. And, you know, in your case, it's to travel and to, it isn't about money so much as it's about the lifestyle and the things that you want to do.
Yes, it's about finding a life you love living, doing more of what you want and less of what you don't want. And how can you do that? And understanding how to manage your cash flow is definitely a part of that process. So if you hate this stuff, I get it. I don't like a lot of it either, but you want to focus on your results. Just like dieting, who wants to, you know, figure out what calories are in what food. But if you want to have a fit, healthy body, you're going to keep in mind, be really mindful of what you put in your body. It's the same thing with your spending.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that, you know, we both talk about building a relationship with money. And to do that, you need to spend a lot of time with it and you need to pay attention to it. Yeah. And so I love the process of getting to a point where it isn't not fun. I mean, it's not the best time you've ever had, but it can become something where you and your money have a good relationship, looking at it, spending time, you know, doing the things that you want to do to move your financial life forward isn't a drag anymore. It's actually something where, you know, you're kind of excited to sit down and get to that next goal. And so I think that's where we can all get to. And it is similar to food. You know, if you start to find ways to cook some really interesting, healthy meals, it starts to get kind of fun. You start to enjoy it a little more. So it's kind of the same concept.
It's exactly the same concept. Absolutely. It's discipline and what you focus your attention on and the results that you want, as opposed to what you have to do every day to get those results, right?
Right. And I love your mindset that is one of like being enthusiastic about money, because, you know, that attitude alone allows the whole process to take shape and, you know, just be more fun, which is part of, you're a fun person, you're looking to travel and have fun. And I understand that. And that's one of my core values too, is to have fun with work and to have fun with money, because it's so related. So we've all been through times when dealing with money isn't fun, but I think what makes it really unfun is the avoidance, because that's where a lot of the problems show up, when you avoid or you don't, you know, participate in your financial life and get really close to it. So it's not what we were going to talk about today, but it's just kind of something that came up.
Yeah.
So let's talk about taxes, since it's tax day and we can all go have a little celebration, whatever that means to you tonight, because taxes are complete for 2019. And it was extended. I know that people in the financial industry, like accountants and CPAs, were having a really long tax season. I've got some who I'm close to, and boy, the work just didn't end this year for them. So I'm sure they're celebrating quite a bit. Having talked about taxes for a second, what can we do so that going forward, we make this process simpler, more enjoyable, more organized, all the things that can just take some of the, I don't know, the difficulties out of tax preparation and planning?
You know, there's three key things you can do. And one is get organized now. And also really keep in mind that there's a difference between what you have to do for government and to keep yourself out of trouble, and what you can do from an organizational standpoint, and what you can do as a core value for yourself. So if you say, look, I do my calendar year from January, December, because it's easier for me to keep track that way, then you don't wait until July 15th to be submitting your taxes at the very last minute. You've already got pretty much everything organized and tracked by the end of the year, because you were being mindful of your finances. So if you are not one of those people who are organized and tracking your finances, make 2020 the year. You can do it. And what's one of the things I teach is a system on how to do that, because, you know, there are a lot of moving pieces. And if it's hard for you, no wonder, because it's super confusing. And that's one of the reasons why I use a balance sheet, a spending plan, and cash flow tools to help us manage all the moving pieces, because you always have to be mindful. There's two parts that you're managing: one, your money, and two, what you have to report. And all money is not created equal. So you have to really understand how you're filing your taxes, and then what you can deduct, and then how you're following up what you're deducting. So how do you keep track of that, and the paperwork that you need from a compliance standpoint to prove that you have actually had a business expense. So that's where that organization comes in handy. And the other thing I like to share is kind of think of it as walking a labyrinth, right? You're just trying to do one thing better this year than you did last year. Don't try to do it all. Don't think you're gonna, run the marathon when you're just starting the race. Just do one thing. And if you can do that one thing consistently, then you'll improve over last year's performance. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing you can do is schedule your time to do this work, right? Because we're always thinking April 15th, or in this case, July 15th is the date. That's not the date. The date is, you got to get that information to your accountant. And think of the students and being in school. Who gets the best attention in school? The kid that pays attention and is engaged, or the kids that's sitting in the back not doing the work? It's, I'm going to be able to do more for you if you engage with me. So I highly encourage you to put the date on your calendar that you're going to submit your taxes early. Like, do it now for next year, and set reminders so that you know that when you have to show up. I think it's Les Brown that says you have to show up to grow up. And it's really an engaged process, because a lot of people end up dumping on their financial services providers because they feel like, oh, I'm paying for this service. You're not going to get as good of results as if you engage in the process. So that's the second thing. Schedule your time. And then I encourage you to look at your tax liability for this year and go back and see how much did you pay in taxes, and think about, is it you're going to have the same income as next year? Some of you will, and some of you will not. And so then what are some of the strategic things that you can do to plan to deal with that variance perhaps of income? And once you look at that, what you're paying on a percentage basis, sometimes that can motivate you to get in the game. Because what you're not aware of, you're not motivated by. But when you really look at paying, hard dollars to the IRS, when you don't have to pay that much, you might want to play that game.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. And I love the idea of being organized and being on top of it throughout the year, because I do think for many people, it's just this mad rush at the last minute, and you don't even know, your income or your expenses until you sit down to prepare for your taxes. And that's a shame. That's a real missed opportunity to have been looking at them all along. So I always make sure I set a tax appointment with my CPA midway through the year. So, because that'll force me to pull numbers together and to meet with him in this case, and to plan, because I've had those years in the past where it was a giant surprise. You're going to owe some giant number, and you find out, sometime in March, and there's no time to pull it together even. So I decided a long time ago, I never wanted to have that surprise tax bill again. So I make sure I at least know how the year is going halfway through. So if I need to save more, or, whatever, find some other ways to manage that tax impact, then I can. So
yes.
Yeah. And honestly, it isn't, you're right. You're not doing this just for compliance. You're doing this. It's a great exercise to go through, because it's getting you to look at your numbers on a regular basis, if you think of it that way.
Yes. And I just call them choice management tools. You are just using these tools to make choices that get you closer to what you want. And that's why your goals are so very important, because what you're going to do is going to be different than what I'm going to do, even if we have exactly the same type of income, because our goals are different. So
right.
Very personal.
Yeah. No, that's great. And, the people who don't understand taxes, I think it's really worthwhile to understand, how the tax return is put together, and what makes up, what are the deductions that you can take. And so I know a lot of people just like to punch the numbers in, sometimes with TurboTax or whatever, not really understanding how it all flows through and creates the end result. And I think it's really important to understand that. And so you don't have to be a tax accountant, but you should understand what makes up the tax return, because those are numbers you can potentially manage.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I find it super interesting that people will go through and really negotiate heavily with a small business owner to get them in on the best price, right? And it's a small business owner, but yet they don't go through their tax return to go through that same negotiating process, because you just don't even think about it. You're not taught to do that, but you could actually get bigger value there than you could negotiating, $100 off of a price on it with a small business owner. So
yeah, that's a great point. There's potentially huge savings there if you understand and manage those tax deductions. So okay, a few things. So if you find that you typically owe money, you're going to have quarterly tax payments coming up, how do you suggest people manage that? Because that can be tricky as well.
That can be super tricky. So how do you manage tax liability when maybe you have funds in the bank and you're going to have to pay them, but not right away?
Right.
So the answer to that is, and this is really annoying when you're looking for advice, which we're not giving here. We're having discussions, and let's be upfront. We are not giving tax advice. We are not giving legal advice, business advice. We're just having a conversation. Got to throw that out there as a past compliance officer, right?
I appreciate you saying it.
Yes. So the answer is it depends on you, because it's just like you might be able to have chocolate in your house at night and control yourself and not eat it if it's there. Me, if it's in my house, I'm going to eat it. So I have to know myself to know what strategy I can employ. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong too, because when you're in financial services, you're always looking for the highest and best return on your asset. They're looking at ROI, return on your investment. Well, I'm kind of looking from a value on investment. I have to take in myself, what are my beliefs and my behaviors on top of the return on the investment. So if you're someone who knows that you're going to spend that money, or you're with a partner perhaps that can't be trusted, you might want to put that money in and pay it. And in fact, you might actually be liable for quarterly taxes, because a lot of times, your businesses are must pay taxes quarterly. So really important to know yourself. And again, I can't say this enough, why it's so important to have a balance sheet. And so that way you can kind of understand what assets you have and what liabilities you have, because there's a lot of strategic planning you can do if you're sophisticated and you want to play that game. But again, do you have the skills, the knowledge, the discipline to play that game? So it's
right. And for people listening who aren't clear on exactly what that game is, can you give us just an example of how to use the balance sheet in this process?
Sure. And I would say the game is trying to figure out the rules to lower your tax liability. And that might in and of itself offend you, because I know, like, I don't mind paying taxes, because I don't either. I want the fire department to be there if my house burns down. I want the roads to be there. I think there's a lot of great services and infrastructure that are fueled by our taxes. But it's kind of out of balance. And the thing that if you're really doing that strategic planning, you can allocate some of those resources yourself, as opposed to maybe having the government allocate them for you when you don't agree necessarily where some of that money's going. So how you use the balance sheet is in two ways. One, as a business owner, you want to have a balance sheet for your business, but you also want to have one personally as well. And that's what a lot of people miss, especially small business owners. They don't think to do their own family finances, and it's a huge mistake. And so how you use that balance sheet with your, for taxes, for example, you can see how big your cash reserves are if you're doing a balance sheet. If you have a lot of cash reserves, then you're fine and you can spend your money the way you need to. But when is that money going out? And that's where you're going to want to know your liabilities, because you could have $100,000 in your checking account today and totally forget that you've got accounts payable out there that you have to pay out the door. Maybe some property taxes you forgot about, or, you know, who knows? There's plenty of expenses out there. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So, so the balance sheet is your constant check on, you know, your liabilities that you could look at any point in time. And how would you?
You know, let me just back up and say you want to use that balance sheet along with a spending plan or a P&L for a business, because the P&L is where the income and the expenses flow, but it really doesn't take a look at your everything holistically. And that's why you use the balance sheet next to that, because that way, you know, if that number is going up or down on a month, you know, if you're doing it monthly, if you have a business, you kind of see how you're tracking, and then you go in and go deeper on your P&L to see what's going on. So I want to, make that clear.
Okay. Okay, great. So do you suggest for people to have separate bank accounts or ways to kind of separate that money? So when their quarterly taxes are due, you know, should you be reserving a certain amount every month? Is there a system that you think works best so people aren't caught at that quarterly deadline without the funds?
You know, and that's another one of those, great question, right? What do you do? How do you manage that reserve for your taxes? And again, it depends. It depends on how big your business is. You know, the strategies for a small business are different than a medium and a large business. So let's assume it's small business, right? So again, it just depends on how all of your accounts are set up. And it could be for a lot of small business owners, especially independent contractors or those folks who have an LLC and they maybe have 1 or 2 clients. It's a pretty good idea to have a separate account to put that money away in so that you don't get confused, because it's really easy to lose track of time, and 3 months goes by so fast, you know, because you're working on your business.
Right. Yeah, it does go fast. And when the funds are all mingled together, it can be very tricky to, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. 1 minute it looks like a lot, and then your normal outflow, and all of a sudden, which I think was an issue this year, even with the PPP loans and all of that, you know, for people who were getting extra funds this year, you know, where they put them and how they handle them, so they weren't just mixed up with everything. So just something to think about in general, I think, when it comes to finances.
Absolutely. Even with your personal finances as well, you want to make sure that when I teach a balance sheet class, find your balance, and setting up the balance sheet. And one of the things that we go over is having a rules and guidelines for each account. So you go through and you actually figure out, what am I using this account for? Because a lot of people get so busy, and you've gone to the bank, and we know a certain large bank got a class action lawsuit against this one. You went to the bank and they said, oh, do you want to open a separate account? You're going to get, you know, $100, $200. And you say yes, not thinking about all of the extra work that's going to cause you to deal with. And then you end up getting 10 accounts that you're trying to manage. So it's really important to go through and really understand what those accounts are for, what are the minimums, what are the maximums, and that way you can manage your time and your work a little bit easier.
Right, right. Yeah, great, thank you. And you know, we are halfway through the year of 2020. So we've already you know, been operating now for many months in this current year, and people have still been preoccupied with their 2019 taxes. So how do we kind of ramp up and accelerate this so that we're not behind in this new year?
Well, I would highly encourage you to set aside a time. So each month, I call it Money Maintenance Mondays, right? Money Maintenance Mondays. Pick a Monday at the first of the month and just have a set of routines that you do. And once you start doing that consistently, it becomes a lot easier. And then you get systems set up. And if you go to my website and you email me, contact me, I'm thinking of starting a Money Maintenance Monday call so that we could all work together and just get some of that work done, kind of like a guided meditation. I don't know. If you guys are interested, listeners, give me a call or email me and let me know you're interested in that. And I get that going if I had enough interest. So
that's great. Yeah. And I do think setting up a regular time to address these things is so important. And so, if you're not caught up at this point with your, profit and loss statements and all of that for 2020, now is a good time to jump on that. And actually, because of where we are in the year, you'll want to do your tax planning appointment basically now, as soon as those numbers are pulled together, right?
Well, you can do it mid-year and you can see where you're at. And then I also like to do a meeting in September, because in September, I've gotten 3/4 of my revenue in and my expenses. And then then my accountant or my tax strategist can go through and tell me if there's any advantages of putting money in a retirement plan, or the type of retirement plan, or any laws that maybe they see on the books. And here's one of the things for 2020 that I think everybody is going to be interested in. And this came from my accountant. Just had a meeting with him trying to understand how to explain income to my daughter, clarifying a few things. And I was saying, I don't understand, like, we have so much debt in the economy. I don't know how, I don't see how this is all going to flow. He said, well, one of the things that they do to get revenue up is they will double the size of the tax department, reporting department, and they will start auditing. So if you are doing anything in the gray space, or if you're not doing some strategic planning, you might really want to, this might be the year you want to get tight, because I can see where that could be a strategy by our government to try to recapture some of the revenue that we have lost. So
interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. I'm like, oh gosh, okay.
I know. I think it's fascinating too. Yeah, and there are going to be a lot of new things that they'll be looking at as well, including the forgiveness applications and all of that. I don't know exactly who will be looking at those, but it's going to be an interesting year, because people are going to have a lot of income from other places, and you should be very aware of how you're taxed on things like unemployment. And I don't have the answers to that, but your accountants will. And so there are a lot of new things that went on this year that will be interesting to talk to your tax accountant about.
Yes. And some things you don't realize are taxed, and it can be shocking. And then if you're retirement age 62 and you've got different type of income, it can impact other benefits. Again, I'm not a specialist in any of that. What I help people do is organize so they have the numbers, so that then we can discuss what what team member do you think you need to add to your team to help you manage that. And it's quite an extensive list to manage your finances. If you have any complexities whatsoever, you want to have a team you can trust. And I always suggest people go to CPA if you have any assets whatsoever, because they do that all day long, and it is worth having somebody on your side if you ever have any problems.
Yeah, I totally agree. Couldn't agree more. So the other thing that you brought up earlier when we were speaking was the many people who are part of the gig economy, and how that's a little bit complex right now. So what suggestions do you have for them to organize all their information and to kind of handle that in the best way possible?
It is to really understand the difference between gross income and net income. And so many people don't understand that, and with good reason, because one, it's not taught, and two, it's really complex, and it kind of depends on the type of income, when it comes in, and very confusing. So what you want to do, if you have, if you're receiving what's called 1099 income, that is generally you are contracting out from someone, you're not getting a W-2 where the benefits are taken out. You really want to go online and do some research. And there are a lot of times cities have resources that you can call. I don't know what they are here in Los Angeles, but I do know that they have resources that can help walk you through that. Probably you could learn it all on YouTube. I mean, there is so much great information, but go, like I would YouTube and go, hey, how do I calculate taxes for 1099? And I think there's even calculators out there that do that, but understand that you have more tax liability than somebody earning W-2 income. And then to make matters even more complex, but just to plant the seeds in your listeners' heads, is that I can make 1099 income as a sole proprietor. I can make 1099 income in that same kind of service income in an LLC, which is classified differently, or in an S Corp or in a C Corp, and it all flows differently and is taxed a little bit differently. So that's why it's super important to understand how you're getting paid and what kind of entity you're getting paid in. And for small business owners, my goodness, if you don't understand the new laws that differentiate independent contractors as opposed to employees, you're going to want to know that. You're going to want to be compliant with that, because the penalties are pretty stiff, and they've really tightened the reins on what is considered an employee. So
yeah. So I think the real benefit here is not necessarily answers, but it's questions. I mean, what questions you need to be asking yourself, your accountant, so that you can, have the intelligence around this to really give yourself the best advantage. And so, a lot of times not knowing what to even ask or talk about is the biggest problem.
It really is. You don't know what you don't know. So how can you ask the questions? And then so many people will give you one view, because that's their view. Because if you go to an attorney and you go to a CPA, you can get totally different advice. That's what I found out in real estate. It's like, oh, are you kidding? Why didn't you tell me this before I spend all that money doing X, Y, and Z? Well, you didn't ask. Well, how would I know to ask? So that's why I say, like in my work, 7 Steps, I have vision realization team members. And those are people who do the work and service, but they are even more invested in seeing you succeed. So they're going to be more likely to share those questions with you without you asking. And that's who you're really looking for, somebody that has your back.
Yeah, it's so important. I remember when we sold a business, and actually no one told us, not even my accountant, because they didn't ask the question, and it wasn't, it just slipped. The broker didn't tell us who had sold the business. But, that money should have been handled in a certain way and put into an escrow account to avoid certain taxes, and just, we didn't ask. Nobody brought that up. So you want to be sharp on this stuff. I think that is really the big takeaway here, is know enough to be dangerous. You don't have to know everything about preparing your own tax return, but know enough to ask the right questions. And I think that goes for anything. I also think it's interesting, just like you were saying, everybody comes at it from a different point of view. So when you're talking to your tax accountant, they're focused on taxes. Exactly. So advice to you as a business owner will be around how do you, save money on taxes. If you talk to your business coach or somebody else, they may give you different advice that maybe is, has some positives in some other area. So you have to know who you're talking to and kind of where their perspective is as you're going through this as well.
And you have to understand that there are so many levels of expertise within, when you say accountant, are they a CPA? Are they an enrolled agent? Do they focus on the entertainment industry? Do they focus on real estate investing? So there's all these nuances within that niche that you really want to be aware of. And how would you know as a consumer? You would not know unless you have a team. And so that's why do some of the work I do is to bring this up so that we can create those conversations, so that somebody else's question is going to be an aha moment for you and be something you would not have thought of. And that's why I think it's absolutely insanity not to want to talk about money, because how are you going to learn and do anything differently if you can't talk about it and there's shame around it? So if that's you, or you want to talk about money, come to my website, join my email list. Like, let's just talk. And there is just nothing that we can't talk about and find you the right resources on. But again, we don't give tax, legal, and accounting advice.
Right, nor do I, but I do
Right.
love to talk about money. And
Right.
and I think, you know, another one of the important things, you're right, you need to have a team. You need to know your team's strengths and limitations. I mean, a bookkeeper is, people will call their bookkeeper an accountant, but a bookkeeper is not a CPA and doesn't, sometimes some bookkeepers.
Exactly. Right.
And so get to know the people that you're working with and ask the questions. It always drives me crazy. It's the same thing with doctors, where people just sort of listen and take it in and for whatever reason feel insecure or fearful about just asking every question that's on their mind. I don't have that problem. I will ask questions until they want to boot me out of their office, but I want to understand. It's curiosity. It isn't even skepticism or not trusting them. It's just, I want to understand what's going on. And so I'm going to ask the questions of the professionals until I do. And that's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. And it's a great plan even to write them down and ask. When I was when I got into securities, I was a sales assistant. And as a sales assistant, anything that goes wrong comes down to you because you are the lowest person on the totem pole and can get rid of taken out quick. So you learn really fast to CYA. And one of the things I learned there was you always ask, if you don't know, you ask 3 different people and see if you get the same answer. If you get the same answer, then you probably got the right answer. But if you get 3 different answers, which happens so often, then you know you have to keep going. So that's my golden nugget for your listeners today is if you don't know, you get one answer, don't stop there. Get to ask 2 more people.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So, and this is how you avoid all the millions of stories of, you know, a friend of mine actually just told me, I'm not going to hire a bookkeeper. I'm going to learn QuickBooks and I'm going to do it myself, because a friend of mine just told me about the person who worked for them and embezzled, you know, all their money. And that's not the answer, to take it all on yourself and be your own bookkeeper and CPA when you have your own business to run in some other area. So I would say, again, be on it, have enough ability to, you know, enough knowledge to be able to do your own little audits. You know, you can audit numbers pretty easily if you understand them and not have to do them yourself. So yeah, okay. Well, I think we're about out of time actually, but this was pretty interesting. And I hope if nothing else, people feel empowered to make this upcoming year a better year than maybe the last in terms of, you know, tax planning and preparation and just knowledge, just knowing what they're doing so that they can, I mean, knowledge is power, and planning and organizing and doing things ahead of time eliminates so much stress and really does bring you the results that you want. So Leslie, thank you so much for being here and sharing all your expertise. And we look so forward to having you back to keep talking about money, because everybody needs a little more money education in this world, I think. Not everybody, but a lot of people. So tell the audience how they can find you one more time. If they want to email you, what's your email address?
Well, the website is structuredsuccess.com. And on my page, you will see contact me. So you don't even have to remember anything else, structuredsuccess.com. And just email me and let me know if you want to be on my mailing list, or if you'd like to attend be on the list for one of the events that I do. And I also do a one-on-one discovery that you'll see on my website. So if you don't know where to start and what to do, I have a nice, very in-depth questions that I asked you so we can go through and find out where you're at, where you kind of want to be, and then give you some strategic action steps to get you from here to there. So I would love to chat with you and share with you what I learned the hard way. So please check it out.
That's great. Thank you so much. That's very generous. And I hope people will check it out, because a strategy session with you would be very valuable. I'm also going to offer a strategy session with me if you're interested in career change, growing your business, getting a better relationship with money. I was a former CPA, but I mostly love now to talk to people about their mindset around money and their relationship with money and how their behavior reflects beliefs that they have, old, ancient, young child kind of beliefs around money. So you are also welcome to come to limitfreelife.com and sign up for my weekly wisdom, which will come to you in your inbox via email, and you'll be informed as to other things that we have going on. So thank you so much for being here, and look forward to seeing you next week, and congratulations on tax day and getting your taxes in. Okay, take care. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, Leslie.